Today we're going to be talking about responsible use of AI in law enforcement drones, and I have a very exciting panel with me today. We'll skip to that slide. So there's my giant face. Justin McCarthy is with our company, Skyfire AI. He is in charge of our advocacy and partnership, so he's going to be talking about the responsibility and the ethical use of AI. Dr. Brian Davidson is our co-founder and chief technology officer, and then Chad Tillman is the UAS program coordinator for the Huntsville Police Department. So welcome. Thank you guys all for joining me. So just to give you a little bit of background before we get started with the panel discussion on what we do at Skyfire, we are a full-service drone solutions company. We've worked with nearly 1,000 agencies across the country, from a 6-person police department in Idaho all the way up to the Secret Service, Customs and Border Patrol, FBI. We've worked with all of the branches of the DoD, and we focus on bringing solutions to those agencies that are looking to incorporate drones into what they do. That can be anything from just helping you select the right aircraft, all the way up to training, manufacturer-specific training, FAA consulting, and approvals. And then most recently, we were brought together with a fabulous AI software company, one that Brian helped found. And so together, we are now looking for areas where AI can help augment the stuff that we've been doing for many years in the police, fire, emergency management, and defense drone areas. So a couple things real quick to kind of set the stage here. So I want to talk a little bit about how public safety agencies use drones currently. As I mentioned, we've worked with about 1,000 of them, and every one is a little bit different. That conversation always starts with what is the use case that your agency wants to employ. So in this case, bigger is not always better. We typically have this inclination as humans to want to get the best, the biggest, the most expensive, the top of the line, but that's not always the best choice in this case. And so when we first evaluate an agency's program or their desire to have a program, we look at things like, what is your use case? What is the mission that you're trying to accomplish? If you look at it and say, hey, our biggest thing is we want our SWAT and tactical team to have a drone, then having a big, giant outdoor drone is not going to be the right choice for you. Having a small, tactical indoor drone that can fly indoors is the right choice. If you want to do, high Overwatch and ISR mission, then a tiny indoor drone is not the choice for you, and it would be something, bigger and that has more endurance and more weather resistance. And those drones run the gamut from, the $500 drones that you can buy at Costco or Best Buy. We have lots of agencies that use those drones. Because they're essentially disposable at that point. So if you think about a SWAT or tactical situation and you want to send a drone into a building, and you're risking a $500 piece of plastic versus risking an officer or multiple officers' lives or even the suspect's life. If that $500 drone gets trashed, throw it away, replace it, send it in for repairs, $50, $100. And so that's why we use those types of aircraft. Then obviously it runs the spectrum from there. So we have agencies that are using $150,000, $200,000 fixed wing, long endurance aircraft, and it's about getting the right tool for the job. Typically, and I would say probably, I don't know if you would agree with this number, Chad, but about 95 to 98% of police departments that are using drones are doing what they would call a patrol-based program. Meaning that they put the drone inside a police car or they put it inside a fire truck and they drive it to a call. That's a great way to do things. Huntsville, and Chad can tell you more about this as we get into it, has an amazing patrol program and has for many years. Probably one of the best in the country. What's the number right now, number of drones?
We have 20 officers currently filled with drones in the back of the vehicles, and 16 provisional pilots.
So, I mean, that's a huge number, especially given the relative size of the department here in Huntsville versus some of the bigger cities. Patrol program is fantastic. It's the easiest way to employ drones in public safety, but the challenge is that you still have to drive to the call, and you still have to get there and set up the drone and take the time to do that. Also, that person is responsible for doing something else as well while they're there. They don't just get to be the drone person. They have to be a police officer or a firefighter as well. And another challenge, Huntsville is still a fairly, it's a very large city geographically. So you have to make sure that you have drones in the right places with pilots that are able to fly them and batteries that are charged and software that's updated. And so there are some limitations to that type of program. The newer way to do it, or I should say an additional way to do it, is what's known as the drone as a first responder model. And so that's what we have diagrammed here. So instead of driving to the scene of a call, we have drone pre-positioned on a rooftop, ready to respond to a 911 call. So as soon as we get an idea of where the call is, and if it's within the radius of that aircraft, we can launch the drone immediately, and in most cases get there in 2 to 3 minutes. That's saving 4 to 5 minutes of time. And so if you think about this, I'll give sort of a silly example and then a much more serious example. Where this could be useful. So we ran a call for a department outside of Atlanta, where the call came out as there was a woman unconscious in the parking lot of a Little Caesars. We got the drone there in 60 seconds, and we found out that not only was she not unconscious, she was eating pizza, and it had pepperoni on it. So it's a silly example, but if you think about the fact that we were able to cancel police, fire, and EMS within 60 seconds, and in fact, I say cancel, but they hadn't even been dispatched yet. And you think about the fact on top of that about every agency in the country is about 30% understaffed, and we can clear a call like that, that means that they can go focus on something more important. And so the idea behind DFR is a good one. A more serious example of where this could have made a huge difference, and I don't want to get into the politics of it or point any fingers, but is the case of Tamir Rice that some of us know well about. So in this case, there was a report of gunshots in a park, or somebody with a gun in a park. The officers responded, they got out of the vehicle and shot him and killed him within 3 seconds of stepping out of the vehicle. As it turns out, it was a kid and it was a toy gun, and that was actually relayed to the 911, but that was not relayed to the officers. The average response time in Cleveland for a priority 1 call is 7 minutes. So if a drone had been there in 2.5 minutes or less, that would have given them 5 minutes to know before they came on scene, guns blazing, that it was a kid and that it was a toy gun. And so this is a really, a much more sobering example of where this technology could have made a difference. So we'll talk about some specifics of what's going on in Huntsville, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of how this is changing. This idea of the drone first responder program started in Chula Vista, California, just outside San Diego, back in 2019. Actually 2018, and we were privileged enough to work with them and help them get that established. There's only about 25 agencies in the country that are doing DFR. There's about another 50 that are thinking about it, in the process of starting it, and various stages of it. Huntsville is one of those, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. We're lucky enough to have received the contract to actually operate that program, so it's something that we're doing together with Huntsville PD. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. So how does the DFR program work? Well, a 911 call comes in, and that's the trigger. And it's important to understand that we will not go out and fly unless we are requested. So I want to state that unequivocally up front. We don't do anything without being asked to be there. This is another tool in the toolbox. This is another way that we help respond to 911 calls. So whether it's the 911 call or whether there's some other initiating event, and there's various cities that are looking at things like gunshot detection as a triggering event, or any number of things, we get an indication that it's time to go. Our remote pilot makes the decision to launch. They press the button, and then we have a rooftop operator, which we have to have the rooftop operator by FAA regulation. We can get into that, or maybe we won't today. I don't know. The FAA stuff is super boring, so maybe we'll avoid that topic today. But we have a rooftop operator who makes sure that the drone is charged and ready to go, gets it in the air, and then we have a real-time data stream that's coming back to not only our operations center, but if needed, to the officers that are responding, to the command staff if they need it. The mayor can pull it up if needed, or whatever the city determines is important to them. Here's an example of a flight that we did just the other night. There's nothing exciting or interesting necessarily. I just wanted to kind of show you what that looks like. So the drone deploys from the roof, and this is a couple minutes long, so I'm just going to kind of let it play as I talk. But we get an address to go to. We place the address in the system. We made the decision to launch the drone, and then the drone goes. So this is a representation of what the screen looks like for the operator. Again, one of the things that we're going to talk about here as it relates to AI is, complete autonomy versus having a human in the loop. One of the most important things to be aware of about that conversation as it relates to drones is that the FAA requires us to have a human in the loop right now. So there has to be a human being standing there with a remote that has the ability to say, hey, I'm taking control of this aircraft. That's going to be a necessity for the foreseeable future. Good, bad, or indifferent, we're stuck with it. So we'll talk about the good, bad, or indifferent part in a minute, but right now that's what we're dealing with. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, kind of in between our panelists here, we have all of our telemetry down here at the bottom. We fly between 350 and 400 feet above ground. Drones are required to stay under 400 feet above ground, so we've picked the 350 to 400 as the area that we want to stay in, primarily because there's nothing to hit at that altitude. I think the rocket's only 346 feet tall, so I think we're not even going to hit that. That's in Redstone's airspace, so we stay away anyway. But we can go up to 2 miles in any direction from the launch point, which gives us a 16 square mile box. So we can go 2 north, 2 south, 2 east, and 2 west. We have thermal imagery on the drone, which is, it sounds very like Predator-ish, but it is nice at night because we primarily operate here in the evening and at night. And all it really does is show us if there's a hotspot somewhere. And so, if we're trying to find somebody who's running away, or on the flip side, we've got an Alzheimer's patient or, a child with autism who wanders away, it's very easy to see where they are in the context of where we're looking. And if we were to switch over to the daylight camera, it's like pitch black. So it's really helpful for that purpose. So just to give you kind of an idea, we take the drone, we get out there, everything is relayed back to the command center, and then when we're done with the call, we hit return to home, and the drone comes back and lands itself on the roof. And so that's the sort of the concept of operations for how a DFR program works. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let each of you guys kind of introduce yourselves, 30 seconds, how you fit into this puzzle, and then we'll jump into some questions here. So, Justin, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Matt. Pleasure to be here. My name is Justin McCarthy. I am responsible for our partnerships and advocacy at Skyfire AI. We do a great deal of work in community engagement across the country. When we start our drone programs or support drone programs within public safety, and we'll talk about this today, it's really important for us to engage with the community. It's really important for us to be as transparent as we can be, and ensure that all of the policies internally are communicated to those who we are trying to protect and serve, or our clients are trying to protect and serve. So I'm really excited to be here and engage with this conversation, and I'll hand it over to Brian.
Hello, I'm Brian Davidson. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Skyfire AI. We were originally an AI automation company and a data science company, and we saw the opportunity together to use the drone platforms as a first responder and to be able to automate that and make it more effective. So we were, together we are bringing AI and the drone platform for first responders into systems of the future, which we'll talk about during the hour. It's a pleasure to be here and speak to some of the issues that are really important as we move forward with this technology.
I'm Chad Tillman. I am the director of the UAS team with Huntsville Police Department. We've had a drone team. We initiated this back in 2018 when we started planning our program. We did not buy any drones until 2019. From the get-go, we took the approach that we'd been looking at others that had been, go out there, buy the biggest, best, most expensive, and they were sitting in closets collecting dust. And so we took the approach of design our missions, design the things that we are going to fly for, and then let's match hardware to mission. And as we begin out, one thing that's already been said, we started out with, we do not fly unless there is an event. We do not want to have the drones in the air just patrolling the air. So anytime you see one of our drones in the air, it's going because there has been a call for service. we were carrying that over into the DFR program. Our DFR program, we're doing it a little bit differently than most because we have such a functional patrol program. Our patrol program right now, we can get a drone on scene in a little over 4 minutes. 5 minutes is about our average. And so we were a little bit reluctant at first to look at DFR because we were getting such good response times. In the 2 months that we have been actively engaged with the DFR program, our average time on scene now is down to 2.5 minutes. And our launch time is just right over a minute, about 1 minute and 15 seconds to get launch. And we are seeing very great returns with that. So we're very happy with the way things are going and looking forward to what's going to happen.
Great. Well, thank you, all three of you, for being here. Both Brian and Justin flew in from out of town, and of course, Chad's here in town, so thank you guys for being here. So one of the things, as I said, I've been working on this for 10 years. Chad's been doing this since 2018. It works fine now, right? And so, but there are definitely limitations to the technology. So, Brian, I want to start with you this is an AI conference, so I want to launch right into it. What was it about this particular industry, this particular problem set that sort of got your attention and said, hey, this is a place where AI might be useful?
A lot of AI technology, as we see, it gets used for social media, or certainly in the DoD. But the first responder space was a space where it has an immediate impact on people's well-being. Drones for good was always something that Skyfire, before we joined, we talked about, and we firmly believe in drones for good, and we believe in AI for good too, coming together. I'm a technologist, so from a technical point of view, drones are robots. They're sensors. They're computers. They're part of a system that has to be part of the first responder system. So it's a very rich platform where AI can really make an impact both on the short term and the long term, and an extremely attractive application for that.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to highlight too, because so much of what we all hear about drones is, or had been in the past, about the defense space and kinetic operations with drones overseas, and then now we hear a lot about Amazon delivering packages and things like that. And this is one of the things we talk about all the time internally, is like the value of drones is not Amazon's going to be able to deliver my dog food faster. The value of, which will be great. I mean, I'm going to sign up, so Don't get me wrong, I'm going to take advantage of it, but I don't think that that's the real promise of drones. And what we've seen time and time again is that the real promise of drones is, the response in public safety and where we can make a difference. So to that point, Chad, I want to ask you, obviously we're just scratching the surface now of what's capable under the DFR style program, but because you've been doing patrol-based operations for many years, give us an example or two of where it's really made a difference in the police response.
Oh my goodness. One of the things that we're finding, just a little bit of background, we have a fusion center, and in the fusion center we have analysts that are watching certain camera placements we have around town, license plates, and other things that are helping the officer on the street accomplish his mission. Well, we have also moved the DFR program into that environment. So we now have the officer on watch that is managing this whole thing. And so that gives us that ability to have a direct interaction with the pilot and the officer who is managing the event from the command or from our fusion center. And they are able to push information out. And we have had already 3 or 4 instances just in the past month, where that DFR drone, if it had not been there, we had one instance where we had an officer that was on the side of the road, and the person that he had stopped decided to be very combative, took the officer down. The officer was not able to get to his radio to call for help. And we were watching him with the drone. The officer on watch in the NAMAC was able to call in other officers, bring them in, and stop what could have turned into what could have been a tragic event. And just last night, the guys were involved in a foot chase with I guess a fairly bad individual. He's been wanted for a while. And the DFR drone, because it was there on scene, was able to, basically run the mission from the surveillance point. So it's definitely making a difference in what we do.
Yeah, and that's just obviously with the DFR in the last 2 months. You guys have been doing this for years, and so, I mean, there's probably any number of stories like that, that it's made a difference. So one of the things that, I think that's really important to talk about is why we decided to apply AI to this situation. And one of the big reasons is what we consider task saturation. So if you think about the idea of flying an airplane, you're monitoring for other aircraft, you're monitoring weather, you're monitoring what airport you're going to, you're listening to radios, you're talking to air traffic control, you're talking to, if it's an airline, you're talking to your dispatch center. There's a lot going on. This is the reason why we have 2 pilots on commercial airliners, because there's a lot to do. And so one will typically be responsible for flying the airplane, and then the other one will be responsible for all the other stuff. The same is true with drones. And it's particularly true in public safety drones, because we're not out, filming a wedding. We're not out, taking pictures of a construction site or a pile of debris. We're typically engaged in life or death situations, or things that could turn into a life or death situation. And so that's just going to amp up the stress. And when you amp up the stress, you get oversaturated, as I think we're all familiar. And so, Brian, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. It's like, what is it about that environment that you think is particularly ripe for automation, if not AI specifically?
It could be a long list.
We got time.
So in the case that we've been talking about here in Huntsville, first of all, getting the drone to a site where there's been a call made, as quickly as we can do that today. And that's where, a lot of the steps go from typing in addresses, understanding what kind of call it is, understanding what kind of camera you might need at the site. All of that is fully automatable without really, it does starts to take the person, the human in the loop. It gives them an opportunity to look at the tasks that matter. Typing in an address is not the thing that, you need to get it right, but that's not the thing that really matters. And if you can cut off 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute in an emergency situation, just the deployment of the drone, getting it in the air and over the site quickly, it could be a lifesaver. And so that's the first spot to it. Another part to it, and this goes for almost, for a lot of uses of drone, is, human fatigue of looking at a video. So you go into the Huntsville Control Center, you have people looking at videos, you're looking for something in particular, and after an 8-hour shift or whatever shift that people are looking at this for, there's fatigue, they're less effective at looking for a particular vehicle, looking for a person, trying to assess the situation, seeing if a crowd gathers. All of that can be fully automated or assisted with AI, so that you can rapidly see what needs to be seen in a scene, and not have to be scanning a video. Frankly, you want to get to the scene and look for the incidents. You don't want to just be looking all over and go, oh, there it is. So it saves time there. But also another aspect, Matt, that we didn't talk about was in Asheville, right? And we were in Asheville right after the flood, using drones to find people who were trapped, distressed, drowning. It was a horrible situation there. Again, that's in that case, you're not flying to a call at a certain address. In that case, you're scanning an area where a disaster has occurred, and you're looking to help people. So the ability to actually fly a pattern over areas systematically, so you don't miss anybody. The ability to see people and see people who are in distress, and not rely on someone who may have been doing this for like 12 hours or whatever, some long amount of time, which we know is human fatigue. So that at that point, AI can be used to identify, where help is needed and get it there faster. It's technology, that's certainly available now and can be done today. And this is a great space to be applying this, applying this technology.
No, it's funny. I'll never forget one of the early pioneers of drone search and rescue was a guy named Gene Robinson, incredibly well respected in the industry, and he was with Texas EquiSearch, which was involved in some very high-profile cases. And he went out and bought it was actually a used mobile dog grooming van, and converted it into like a drone workstation. And I said, why did you set it up like this? And he said, well, because we'll go out and do a search, and we'll do a large area search, and it could be a couple hundred acres, and I need to be tunneled in. I need to take all that video, and I'm going to sit there and watch it, frame by frame, and see, do I see a person? Do I see anything like that? And I was thinking to myself at the time, this was years ago, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? And so going through thousands and thousands of images, or hours of video, and trying to find one pinpoint. I mean, one early example that we've discussed, and there are a few individual pieces of code or pieces of software that do this already, is I know that my subject was wearing a blue shirt when they left. Let's look for anything blue. And so the AI has the ability to sort through all the pixels and say, okay, here's 12 blue things, go check them out and see, is that something that we need to pay attention to? One of the things I want to address to you, Chad, I promise I'm going to get to you at some point. One of the things I wanted to address to you, Chad, is because we're a contractor, right? I'm not a sworn police officer, and none of the people with one exception, that we have flying your DFR program are sworn officers. This is a contracted service, and you hired us to be experts at what we do, which is fly drones. And because of that, we made it very clear from the beginning, I'm never going to make a decision about what to do about anything that I find. My job is to get there, get you the imagery, and then you make the decision, or the police department makes the decision. It's a similar concept with AI, right? We don't want the AI making the decision about what to do about something. We just want it to prompt us and say, hey, this is something you may want to be aware of. So will you talk a little bit about that kind of?
Yeah, but first, a perfect example of what we were just talking about. We had a search out on the Flint River. It was 2 kayakers that were lost. Why people go kayaking right after the flood is beyond me, but they do. And so the conditions that we're in to begin with are a high-risk condition anyway. And so we had the drone up, we were looking, we flew 2 flights, couldn't find anything. We knew we were looking for a lime green kayak with 2 people in it. We pulled them down, went back, we had somebody look at the video, and in those 2 flights, that lime green kayak had been in view for over 10 minutes in the video. Had we had an AI assist that was looking for that lime green pixel, we would have found those people an hour and 15 minutes before we actually did. And so to that point, at first I was opposed to having a contractor come in and fly DFR for us. I thought that the sworn officers would be the best to do this. But what we're finding, and I think this relates to the AI assist, is that now that pilot that's flying, he is getting hints from an officer that's sitting there, I need you to turn your camera here, I need you to pull the camera back, I need you to do this, we need that license plate. The pilot, he is fully in control of the aircraft and flying it, but he is getting this voice, that's sitting here on his shoulder that's telling, hey, you need to pay attention to this, you need to do this. And for me, that to me is where AI is going to assist us the most. Okay, the dispatch call comes out. Here's the address. All right, we're going to fly to that address. I'm looking for somebody in a blue hoodie, black pants, white tennis shoes. AI is going to look, oh, you need to look at this point. You need to look at this point. You need to look at this point. It is not doing it all, but what it is doing, it is clearing the clutter that is surrounding what your task is, and that's finding the guy with the blue hoodie and the white tennis shoes. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot of clutter. I mean, I think that, having flown drones for many years, I'm a manned aircraft pilot as well, there's always a lot going on. And so to the extent that we can reduce that workload, and, this is part of the argument that we make to the FAA is, we're not asking the AI to do everything, right? We may get there, but right now what we're doing is there are certain tasks that we have to repeat every single time. There's a very specific way to do them. When I want to check a weather report, there's a very specific site that I go to, and I ask for a specific thing, and I read it in a specific way. That's a process that an AI agent could do, and then give me the information that I'm looking for. So just to give you a quick example, I asked our AI agent, is it a good day to fly a drone in Huntsville today? And Brian, you love this story because I feel like I taught the AI something. And he's like, yeah, nice, good job. I said, is it a good day to fly a drone in Huntsville? And the AI said, well, it's sunny. Yeah, it's a sunny day in Huntsville. The weather is great. And I said, okay, when you answer that question next time, I would like you to include the fact that for us to fly legally, we have to have ceilings above 1,000 feet, and a ceiling is defined as an overcast or a broken cloud layer. So I have to have ceilings over 1,000 feet. This is what a ceiling means, and I need to have visibility over 3 statute miles. So can you include that in your answer? And then it said yes. And then I said, is it a good day to fly a drone in Huntsville? And it said yes, because ceilings are above 1,000. There is no broken or overcast layer below 1,000 feet, and visibility is above 3 statute miles. And again, I patted myself on the back, and Brian was like, yeah, great. You know how to use ChatGPT. Congratulations. It doesn't take a PhD to do that. So, but the point is, and I make this point to Brian all the time, is what wows us as the end user is like pedestrian to what you guys are doing in the AI science piece. But it just shows you how ripe this is for automation. One of the things that I certainly don't want to dive into it too much because I think it's too early to figure out what happened last night in D.C. And for those who haven't seen the news, there was a plane crash. A 60-passenger commuter flight flying into Reagan last night was struck by a helicopter. We don't know what happened yet. What I can tell you as a manned aircraft pilot is that it's very complex airspace. You're forced into a small corridor. You've got other types of aircraft all around. You've got military bases all around. You've got helicopters landing off airport in various places. And so there is a lot going on. This is the definition of task saturation. I don't know what happened. I don't know if AI would have helped any of that, but it is something. It is a striking example of where a pilot, and again, I'm into speculation here, but a pilot was making an approach to a runway, and their entire job, they have to be laser focused on landing that plane on the runway to the exclusion of everything else. So the question is, how did the rest of the system fail? And I think that remains to be seen. But it goes to this point about task saturation is, what can we take off of your plate so that you can focus on the things that you need to focus on? Brian, do you think that there is a day where humans are taken out of the loop here?
That could be today. It's kind of up to us in terms of how we decide how this technology is implemented. I'm a technologist, and it's my job to see what can we do to serve the mission. And here, for us, it's search and rescue, first responder, and certainly, we have the technology today. It needs to be implemented. It needs to be implemented correctly. And those are big, those are bigger statements than just flippant statements. But we have the ability to put drones into an area, onto a scene, and to provide information so that to support our first responders so people can be rescued quicker. You think of the fires out in Los Angeles and which houses are burning, which are not burning. A lot of these things can be done fully automated with AI. Whether you want to put someone in the loop to monitor that. Monitoring is a certain type of human in the loop. Another human in the loop is whether you need to design your systems so that it has to go through a person. And for this conference, I want to make that distinction. Designing a system where the AI will not move forward until a human says go ahead, and that's sort of that's quite often safer, more assuring, but you lose speed. You lose the ability to scale into multiple systems because you have to have a person there all the time. Then there's the idea of a human in the loop where it's just monitoring. Can put the brakes on, but they're not stopping the progress of the AI. The AI system can then be designed so that it can go and complete the task it needs to complete and not have the unpredictability of what a human in the loop might do. So there are significant issues from a AI system design point of what do you want to do with a human in the loop.
So it's the idea of the human as the gatekeeper versus the human as the monitor.
Right, is a very, very different thing, because human as a gatekeeper, you have to design in. Right. Human as a monitor is different, and then you have to be more rigorous of your AI design to make sure that it doesn't go astray.
Yeah, so having the big red button, and if you need to smash your hand on it, you can smash your hand on it. Justin, I wanted to ask you, this is great, and Brian says we can do this tomorrow. Just because we can, should we? And what are some of the ethical considerations around that we've that looked into?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And Chad kind of mentioned this a little bit, which is it's really important to communicate in communities up front and be transparent that almost all of these missions are as a result of an incident. There's some type of a trigger that occurs where the drone is then going to be used as a force multiplier to complete the mission. And that's really important. When a drone is flying to a mission, all the data that's being collected and stored between the launch point and the mission is not something that the department is going to use. Regardless of what it sees, it is going to assist that particular mission. So it's really important that we look at communicating that both to the community as well as then to the officers, so that everyone understands that AI with drones is not there to create a new mission; it's there to support the missions that already exist. So it's very important that we get that across. The other thing I think that's vitally important as we get in and start doing work with departments of all types is that there are policies set in place from the beginning, and then those policies and standards are communicated to the community so that people are understanding. My mom's not being spied on as she sunbathes by the pool in the backyard, right? I am worried that there's drones in my community, and now cops are going to see the weed plant that I've got stashed behind my trees. It's not the case. Drones are not just going to be flying around, and there's policies put in place. We work closely with folks from the ACLU, and we do so that we can provide that confidence to the constituents within communities that we're there to help and we're there to provide and be a benefit to both the community members as well as then making sure that officers and all in public safety complete missions, but most importantly for us is that they get home safely. So it's a piece of accountability as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the, in the conversations that we've had with the ACLU, it's been, a lot of, look, we understand that there's 25 agencies doing this right now, and all those 25 agencies have the best intentions and the best policies, and we're monitoring them because it's a very small number. How do we keep track of that when it's 250 agencies or 25,000 agencies? Or it's outside of the law enforcement, right? And it's, my HOA is monitoring, with drones because they want to, our HOA, one of our board members is here, so I better be careful what I say. So, I see you. But, we're monitoring to make sure that you mowed the grass in the back as closely as you mowed the grass in the front. So, I think that's where the sort of the slippery slope argument comes into place. I want to ask you, Brian, too, is that something that you consider from a data, architecture standpoint, too, as some of the biases that could be included in the data?
Certainly, it's a different, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is you can say yes, but then you have to decide what does that mean. Quite often, historically with AI, a lot of times these biases appear because people didn't know they were going to be there, right? So that's the challenge of any sort of bias when you're developing an AI system and you're training it is if you're trying to avoid it being biased, you can put that into the design phase. If you're not sure how it's going to be biased, you can't, you have to, it's kind of a wait and see and be an observer and have someone who's responsible that if the system behaves with some sort of bias, that they've identified it and it goes back, it gets recognized. So to the extent that, the drone missions for first responders, for us, we're going to an address where something is happening, we're going to an area, we don't have a strong use case where we're deciding we're not deciding whether to go. We're not looking for things to identify other than the thing that we were called to. So if we're looking for people drowning, we're looking for people drowning. So our application seems to be not susceptible to bias, but as the person in charge of AI, I can't rest on that. Yeah. I have to listen to our users, I have to pay attention, and I have to make sure that it wasn't something that we put into our system that just didn't realize that the data set had a bias to it.
That's a really important point. So this is kind of a loaded subject, but I'm going there. So there's a big concern in the drone community right now about drones that are made in China. Now we have the news that just came out about DeepSeek. We have ostensibly what's being reported as equally as good or stronger model. Foundational model that was done for significantly less money. I mean, I'm overstating the issue here, but if we were worried about TikTok, we're really worried about this. So, we have drones that are made in China that have a certain amount of data on them. We now have foundational AI models that are made in China. I'm going to ask everybody this question. How big of a, let's start with you, Brian, because we're talking about DeepSeek. What does this mean for the AI world? What does this mean to what we do?
Well, Skype, we're a U.S. company. We put the AI on the drone, whether it be a Chinese drone or a U.S.-made drone, but that doesn't control the platform, right? So data does go back to the manufacturer. Similarly, when you're talking about a technology. Whoever the developers are, whether it's onshore, friendly country, adversarial country, wherever it's made, you have to consider that either one they didn't worry about the biases you have. We talk, there's been reporters on the Chinese chatbot, the large language model where they look for biases that the Chinese care about, Tiananmen Square, or they've cleared that out. But what about my part of the world or any other part of the world where what you want the language model to be filtered out or doing is going to be drastically different. So we have confidence that we control our AI models. We use DJI. It's being used across the country. And we share those concerns about a platform that has a software stack that we don't control.
Right. Chad, how do you think about that issue as an operator when you're making decisions about your hardware?
You could have skipped me on this one.
We're among friends here. So.
All right, here we go. We, right now, as our major fleet, we are flying Autel aircraft. The reason we're flying Autel aircraft is because there is nothing else out there manufactured in the United States or amongst our partners that comes even close to comparing to the capabilities that we have. And we kind of look at it this way: it's karma. We're using a Vietnamese manufactured aircraft to find Chinese-made fentanyl. Payback. But in all seriousness, what we have hoped for was the potential to air gap these aircraft so that there was no chance of them transmitting any data back. And for us, on the public safety side, we're different in DoD because most of what we're looking at is, in my mind, is not of any real interest. A meth house just isn't something of national concern. But with the advent of AI, why can't we use AI to actively, in real time, air gap those aircraft to make sure that hey, we found this, that something's going on here, to help prevent any type of data that would be go out. I don't know that that's possible. That's a question I would ask. The other thing that I would hope is that we can eventually start indigenously building aircraft that can compare with these aircraft. But right now, my primary responsibility is saving your life. And if that means that I've got to use this drone to do it because this drone won't do it, I'm going to use this drone. I'll ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah, and it's a really important point, and I have a very strong opinion on this, which is, yes, eventually in an ideal world, we'd all like to move to this, utopia where we're flying American-made drones that do all the same stuff and they're all just as inexpensive. But the reality of it is, as for any of you who are in the Army aviation world, we've spent years and years and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to find the right American aircraft, and we're still having trouble finding the right American aircraft. And so, on the public safety side, we don't have DoD budgets. And so, what a DJI or an Autel drone can do for under $10,000, you're talking about $25,000 or more in many cases with an Allied-built aircraft. And so, I do a lot of advocacy work on the Hill, and what I've sort of advocated for is, look, I understand we have to get there, but let's not cut it off today. We saw, for those who pay attention as closely as the four of us do, we saw what happened in Florida, which is that Governor DeSantis said, as of January 1st, 2023, I think it was, nobody can use DJI aircraft anymore. Well, now you've got 1,800 public safety agencies across Florida that have drones that they can't use. They don't have budgets to replace them. Even if they did have budgets to replace them, they'd only be able to get half as many drones because the drones are twice as expensive. So what I've advocated for is, we understand we have to get there. Let's look at a phased-in approach. Let's say, okay, well, you can keep what you've got and keep using it, but don't buy any new ones. Or one of the big one that's been proposed now in Congress is we're not going to allow new FCC licenses for Chinese-made drones. And so any drone that DJI or Autel currently makes, they can continue to make, but they can't make the next version, which is fine. The ones we got now are amazing. You saw some of the video. And so, I think a reasonable approach to that, I think, is what's going to make the most sense. Chad, I want to ask you, and we'll go down the line here, what do you think is coming in the next 1, 5, 10 years in the drone industry that's really going to change what you do in the public safety space?
Ooh. Star Trek transporters.
I'm in.
Now, I think one of the things that we really want to see, we're talking about time. For us, our goal is to be able to have eyes on that event in 0 seconds. We'll never reach that goal, but that is where we're at. Our goal isn't to buy the big shiny thing with red and blue lights. Our goal is to cut that time that I'm responding to whatever is affecting you. And like right now, the time that it takes us to get that address, plug it in, launch the aircraft is taking about 30 to 50 seconds to do. With AI, Can we cut that down to 5 seconds? The time that it takes to get that aircraft up and get it headed to its location, we can't really affect. So speed, the ability of the aircraft to move faster, to have longer lifespan, to be able to stay airborne. Those are important. Those are physical things that we need to handle. But more importantly, I think for us, that we're looking for is the ability to manage the information that we're getting so that we can put it in the hands of someone who has to make an intelligent emergency decision. We kind of look at it this way. If you're in public safety, the way you want things written in crayon, single syllables on a napkin. Anything other than that takes too much time to read. And that may sound simplistic, but that is the way it is. You've got so much stuff going on. You know, I've got officers on the scene. What's happening to them? Can I do anything? All this stuff is going on. You need a way to help filter that down, something to sit there and say, okay, yes, this is going on, but don't worry about it. Or, yes, you need to look at this. You don't need to necessarily let me do it, but look at this and tell me if this is important to you or not. So I honestly think that the biggest thing for us is going to be automation with human interaction and also with monitoring. A big search area. Man, I tell you what, if I could put up 4 drones that are mesh linked together that I don't have to worry about and they know what they're looking at for over a 100-acre area, that is perfect with me because now I can spend my time with the ones where I need that interaction, watching what my rescue teams are doing and whatnot. So,
Hey, that's a great idea. Let's talk about swarming for a minute. Brian, this is an area we spend a lot of time talking about. Swarming kind of has a negative connotation. Everybody always thinks that a drone sounds like a swarm of bees anyway, so I guess we ought to just own it. But how do you think about, let's see, a better way to put it, multi-ship formations? I think, for the sort of divide and conquer, that Chad's talking about, if you've got a large area search or something like that.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that, because that's an important part of where we want to go, to the extent that we're allowed to do it, from the FAA point of view. We really see as AI, as Chad pointed out, we see AI as the ability, with a team of pilots, you can put a team of drones onto a site. But often you don't have a team of pilots. Often you don't have the time to set up a coordination. And AI technology, where it is today and where it's going, we don't need new discoveries to do this. We could do a search and rescue with multiple drones, and it's all about serving the mission of first responder mission, saving lives, helping people, even medical delivery, getting things, getting an eyes on site, looking for things. To the extent right now, you can scale up. You can't scale up multiple drones to take on a task because right now you need multiple pilots. It just doesn't make sense. And, we're talking about human in the loop. Really, what we want to do is we want to remove those humans in the loop if we can automate it, and we want to be able to put multiple drones. Remove the negative connotations of a swarm. People that comes from a swarm of insects attacking you or something. It has military. Too often our mind goes to the military application, and really we're talking about using it to help people to look over large areas, and it seems to be that we're getting more disasters now. Hurricanes, fires, floods. You need to be able to go out there and figure out what the state of everything is as quickly as possible. And drones are the perfect solution. And if you have to get 10 or 20 pilots there to do it, that's not nearly as effective as having an AI system going and giving you what's going on as swarms of drones look over large areas. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that in the near future.
By the way, let me say this unequivocally for everybody in the room. It is absolutely 100% illegal to weaponize a drone in this country, just so we're clear about that. So there's no ambiguity there. No, but it's a great point. I mean, yeah, multi-ship formation to be able to go out and actually look at for multiple things at a time, I think is key. You brought up medical delivery. I want to ask you about this. Every application that we've talked about to this point is as an ISR, as looking through a camera to see something. Medical delivery is an equally important part of this, something that we're working closely on. Tell me about that use case and sort of how that is evolving.
Yeah, it is rapidly evolving. We've done several studies and pilot programs with major hospital systems and defibrillators and flying defibrillators to incidents. We've also worked actually here in town with UAH with providing rural pregnancy incidents the medication that they need in a much quicker time than otherwise would occur. It's interesting because we talk about what's going to happen going forward, and to be honest, we say this all the time, the drone is almost the least important part of the whole thing. It can fly, the batteries can get a little smaller, maybe it can go a little further. Yeah?
I've got a quick question about what we just spoke about, weaponization.
Yeah.
Weaponization is oftentimes a use case. I mean, you can have a drone that has a flamethrower to clear brush from power lines, which is in use today, but that is also, if used incorrectly, a weapon. Can you clarify what you mean by weapon and if it changes for an average user such as us in the room that aren't with an organization or an organization such as a police force? Is it something that can only do harm? Is it disabling? But what are your thoughts on that?
It's a gray area. And I think that right now the way it's handled is on a case-by-case basis and sort of making the point to the FAA that this is not for the purpose of weaponization. We are currently working on a particular waiver that requires us to carry hazardous materials on a drone. When I think of hazardous materials on a drone, I think of a drone, like spraying napalm or something like that, or carrying a kinetic weapon, or something horrible from a terrorist organization. What we're talking about is, a device that's used actually to protect against those things, and the hazardous material is like 4 grains of black powder that fires something, meant to be protective. And so we're trying, we have to make that case on a case-by-case basis. One end of the spectrum, there is a kid who put a Glock 9mm on a drone and fired it. He went to jail, right? On the other end of the spectrum, I'm carrying a medication that's considered hazardous or, could be used as a weapon or whatever that case may be. It's all about the interpretation. It's all about the safety and risk assessment that we provide to the FAA. And that's part of the work that we do, is making that case to the FAA and saying, look, I know how this could be used, but that's not how it is being used in this particular case. All of that said, the biggest concern, just like many other topics that we talk about, is a nefarious user, right? Whether it's a single person, a state actor, or a terrorist group, that is a real concern. And so there's an entire other side of this industry known as the counter-UAS industry. Ironically, you wouldn't think that us pro-drone people work very often with the against drone people, but we do, because in many cases you're using drones to combat other drones or to detect other drones. We all saw the news about New Jersey, and it might have been aliens, it might have been the military, it might have been the CIA, who knows what it was, right? It probably was airplanes, is my thought. Most of you, unlike those of us who are pilots, don't look up very often and realize that there's small Cessnas going in and out all the time. But whatever the case was, it brought a lot of attention to this counter drone use and detection. We're very lucky here in Huntsville. We have a lot of that expertise here in town. But there's going to be a lot more conversation about that too. So those are some of the guardrails that, on the flip side of that question. Right now, only the Department of Justice, outside of DoD facilities and Department of Energy facilities, it's only the Department of Justice that has the authority to mitigate a drone or take it down out of the sky. Even with that, they need Deputy Attorney General approval to do that. And so we've got to proliferate that down to at least the state level. to say, okay, look, somebody's dropping drugs into a prison. We got to do something about that. Somebody's trying to fly into the airspace of a stadium. We got to do something about that. So that's coming, and stay tuned for that. So, do you have a question? Yeah.
So, Chad, it was mentioned that it's only been used in 25 departments. What metrics are you collecting and sharing with, say, Athens, Madison, and then, of course, throughout the U.S.?
We have a very active conversation. I mean, Athens, Decatur, we've helped both of them out in searches and different activities, things that have gone on. Madison, I live in Madison. I work close with the guys in Madison. This is a community where we all need to be on the same page, particularly when we're adjacent to each other. And unfortunately, it's still kind of the Wild West out there as far as the way that departments are using drones. And I blame a lot of that on vendors, because vendors will come in and they'll sell you everything under the sun and not what you really need. Yeah. And so, yes, it's...
I was going to say, yeah, not Skyfire, but everybody else.
Well, let me rephrase. No, I mean, we've had conversations seriously with people as far as away as Westminster, England, on their drone programs and how to help put them together. And we've had people call us up and share information. I work quite closely with Oklahoma City. They're here in the United States, Oklahoma City is probably the closest model to what Huntsville is, with a full patrol-based system. And so it's interesting talking to them about the ups and downs, because we use different hardware and everything, but we're always learning. The hard part is just codifying that.
Yeah.
Just one thing on the counter US, we run into this now. You would not believe how many times our local facilities are having drones flying over and dropping contraband in. I mean, you would be shocked at how much this is happening. We have had events happen where we've had active shooters shooting at people, and we've had people fly drones in. And I mean, we're not talking just in and up above to watch, but up 10, 15 feet off the ground in front of our SWAT vehicles. We can't do a thing about that based on the FAA regulations right now. There is nothing we can do. But one of the future hopes I have for AI is, how can we identify these aircraft that are coming in? How can we identify an aircraft that is carrying a non-standard payload? And can we make sense of that payload, whether it is a hostile payload or not?
Yeah, and that was part of the problem in New Jersey, is just, okay, it may be something, but identifying it is part of the problem. But to your point, to your question, so just to be clear, there are 25 agencies doing DFR. There are about 4,500 that have drone programs. And so there's a very active conversation around public safety drones. There's a bunch of organizations that work to make sure that we're all talking to each other. So for those who are familiar with AUVSI, is our big trade organization. There's a great Huntsville chapter here. I work very closely with the national chapter. There's another group called Drone Responders, which is a nonprofit organization that is helping to share that information amongst agencies. One of the things that's been really heartwarming to me, you hear all these stories about, oh, the cops don't like the firefighters, and the firefighters don't like the cops, and nobody likes the EMS guys. I'm a former EMS guy, so I take that to heart. But in this space, they do. They get along. We're all talking. We're all sharing data. Specifically to the DFR piece of the program, the data that we're trying to collect is, how long does it take us to get there? How often are we assisting with an arrest? But really, the most important is, how many times can we clear the call without sending an officer at all? Because then we're not wasting taxpayer resources. So, I mean, those are all the things that we're looking at as we go through this.
Over the past 5 years, something that's, there are a lot of people out there, you look at it and say, oh, the firefighters have drones. They're American heroes.
Yeah.
Oh, the police department has drones. They're Satan's spawn. But over the past 5 years, we have seen a serious 12% drop in what we would call high-risk encounters between the citizen and the police officer on first contact, because we've been able to put a drone up and be able to say, oh, wait, this is not a fight, this is a 16-year-old's birthday party going on.
It changes your approach when you walk into a scene,
Yep.
right? You go in on a different posture, and I think that's incredibly important.
I've got a mic. Are you guys, on what you just said, are you having to deal with, or attacking, like the image recognition portion of, working similar program, we worried that the people that are in the backyard, or whether they had weapons before we went in. So are you having to deal with that, kind of an image recognition, they carrying a shotgun or while they're hiding?
Yeah, so the question was, are we dealing with a lot of image recognition before going into a scene? Are we having to detect a shotgun,
We are kind of stuck by what the manufacturers of the drones give us. No, if we put it up in the air, we go up, it's transmitting. We live stream everything that we do. That way we have analysts that are watching what's going on. But typically, say I'm flying to your house, you've got a warrant, what was it, 5 pounds of meth or something? Yeah, we got you, buddy. But we're flying to your house. Our cameras do not drop below 35-degree inclination. So we're always looking at the horizon until we get to that area. If there is a warrant, we always go for a warrant on the property, the curtilage, the house, individuals, and outbuildings. That way we're making sure that if we're looking at your property, that we have a warrant to do so. Otherwise, the only thing we pay attention to is the public areas, the streets, the cars out in the front and whatnot. When we have an event, for example, a traffic accident, we always fly traffic accidents. When we finish flying that and shooting all of that, we pull the card out of the drone, the SD card out of the drone that's been collecting data, hand that to the THI officer that's investigating the wreck. He downloads that data, wipes the card, and then that way the continuity of evidence stays with.
That was my next question. How are you handling chain of custody?
Chain of custody, we try and pass that off to the individual that is in charge of that event.
Yeah, everything records locally, so it's very easy to take the SD card out and hand it to the right person. So, were there other questions? Yeah, we got another question in the back.
Yeah, I have a two-parter. Kind of goes together. It goes off the original point that you said earlier. You only have a 2-mile radius roughly. Is that due to FAA regulations, signal, or is it just a test range? And with that, can you see in the future with you working with, say, the National Weather Service, saying in live tornado warning areas where you can put up drones and track visual formations and so be able to inform areas more precise?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, it's an FAA regulatory thing, and so the way that our authorization is written is that, all right, let me back up. The main point when you're flying a drone is you have to keep the drone within line of sight. That's kind of the default. This is why Amazon's not delivering these packages yet, because they can only do it within line of sight, so it would be horribly inefficient to just be able to go a half a mile. We are starting to enter this world of BVLOS, which is the beyond visual line of sight operations, one of the areas, industries that's been able to really push that envelope is public safety. For obvious reasons, we want to be able to help more people, and so the FAA has granted us the ability to fly 2 miles. We don't have to be able to observe the aircraft anymore, but we do have to be able to observe the airspace. The idea is that, we can say, hey, look, there's a Black Hawk that's really low. We need to be, mindful of that. Or here's a Chinook flying over, especially here in Huntsville. The limitation is that we still have to have an observer on the roof. So we still have to have a person standing up there. We are working towards removing the observer. The way that we're going to get to that place is with ground-based radar. The challenge is that ground-based radar is incredibly expensive. And so right now, paying somebody a couple bucks an hour to stand on a roof and observe is the way that makes the most sense. Eventually it'll be radar or some other kind of deconfliction. The goal always has been to be able to put drones in boxes in remote locations for either weather or protecting an area or whatever, and be able to launch them remotely and observe remotely. The technology is there, but it is a regulatory challenge right now.